We're going to get started. I want to welcome everybody to our very first episode of Unleashed. Unleashed is intended to be a weekly show that's going to feature top thought leaders, tools, strategies, and ideas for you to unleash the potential in yourself and the potential in your business. And I mentioned our goal is not only to bring thought-provoking ideas and topics, but it's also to bring you incredible speakers and thought leaders. And as the weeks progress, you'll know if we're struggling for speakers. If my neighbor Larry starts showing up to talk about how he gets his garden so green and lush, so we'll try to avoid my neighbor Larry at all costs. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm your host Jeff Tetz. I'm the CEO of a company called Results. Our company, in the best of times, is filled with people that are curious about potential. So what separates really successful companies from their competitors? What separates highly successful leaders from their counterparts? And just trying to distill the essence of their behaviors and habits, and the tools and the strategies that they use, so we can sort of then consolidate those and provide it to ambitious, growth-minded leaders in a way that they can actually incorporate those into their own companies. And so when this crisis hit, just like everybody else, we've been racking our brains trying to figure out how can we pivot. And this is one of the ideas that we came up with. And our team has been incredible. The idea generation's been phenomenal. And we thought, you know what, we're always curious and focused about and very purposeful and intentional about people's potential. So what if we could just open that up to the world and start doing a weekly webinar series like this? So this is how Unleashed was born, just great ideas from our whole team. So we hope that we're going to be a regular fixture in everybody's weekly learning activities, and we hope that you're all scheduling time for learning and personal growth through the chaos of what's happening right now. So every Thursday at 10 in the morning, you can count on us to be here for you. So today's focus is leading in turbulent times, and apparently there's some turbulence out there. I've been locked in my house for the last month, so not really sure what's happening out there. Of course, I'm kidding. But we're very, very blessed today for us to welcome my co-host, first of all, Barbara Reppert. Say hi, Barbara.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
So Barb is one of my colleagues at Results, and she's a business execution specialist. She's a CPA by training, and she's worked in several senior leadership positions in mid to large size firms, some manufacturing experience as an example. She's also a certified coach. So she's a wonderful coach, and she's been a business execution specialist on our team for a few years now, leading executive teams through strategy and execution. And we're delighted to kick the first episode off with our special guest today, John Spence, known on Twitter circles as Awesomely Simple. John is a longtime friend of ours. He's one of North America's top-rated thought leaders. He was a CEO of the Rockefeller Foundation in his early 20s, just a few years ago. And he's a voracious learner and reader. He reads more books than anybody I've ever met. I think, John, what do you read a year? 300 books? What are you at now?
Not quite. About 100, 120.
Okay, so,
all the way back to 89. So
don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. So, John, we're so delighted to have you here today, and let's start talking about leadership in turbulent times and what we can do to lead and manage effectively, not just for our people, but for ourselves. So over to you.
Cool. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for spending part of your morning with us. And special shout out to Jeff Clark. Hope you're doing good, man. So here, get a piece of paper out. We are recording this, but I'm going to try to overwhelm you with good practical information. The first thing I want to do is give you a tool to do immediately after we get off this webinar. And here's what it is. I want you to get 2 pieces of paper. And on piece of paper number 1, I want you to write down and give this serious thought, very serious thought. What are the things I can control right now? The things I can control, influence, or impact right now. That's not a very long list, and I'm going to go over 5 big ones for you in just a minute, but everything you can control. And then I want you to take massive action on that list. That should be the focus of your attention all the time. On the other piece of paper, and again, I want you to be very thoughtful about this, and this one's going to take a little bit longer because it's a much longer list, is what's everything you do not have control over right now. And I can start that list off for you. You don't have control over the virus, over the quarantine, over economics, over the government, and on and on and on and on and on and on. And that's going to be a long list. And those are the things that are causing stress and anxiety and overwhelm for you, your family, your customers. And I want you to look at that list. And every time you start obsessing on something on that list, push it away, look at it and go look at your list of things you can't control and put all your focus back on that. This sounds very simplistic. If you take the time to write those out and study them carefully and look at them often, it will help keep you focused on the areas that you're empowered in. You can take some control over. So that's something to start this off. I was a consultant during 9/11 and during the Great Recession. And when those things happened, I saw two sides of both of those events. And I'm seeing the exact same thing right now. The business side of it, what are the things you can control and focus on in your business, and then the emotional side. So I'm going to talk about those two, and then I'm going to finish off with how to lead in those two areas. So when I look at my clients right now and in those past events, I gave them this advice. Number one, I've got a list here to make sure I get everything just right. Now is the time to take amazing care of your employees, especially your best employees. I hope that none of you have to let anybody go. I mean, I really hope that. But all of us have in our companies people that are linchpins, people that really hold up, an unequal amount of the weight in the company. But you want to let everybody know you appreciate them. You're glad they're on your team. They're important to your company. They're important in helping your company not just survive this, but thrive after it. So take great care of your people. Give them all the resources, training, help, support, everything you possibly can to keep them engaged and doing good work. And I'm going to get to that one in a minute. Part of that, number two, is to keep the momentum up, to keep the motivation up, is celebrate wins. Celebrate wins if they're big, small, medium. Anytime something good happens, send out a note, send a text, get on a Zoom call. Call that person up that did it and tell them how great they are and how much you appreciate it. The research shows, and my experience too, that in a great winning culture, people need praise about once every 7 to 10 days. And key idea here, genuine, specific praise, not just, hey, you're doing a great job. It's got to be, thank you very much for doing this specific thing. You did it well for these reasons, and I really appreciate you. Before all of this, it was every 7 to 10 days. I would say now, to keep the motivation and the momentum going up, it's probably every day you need to find something that went right to celebrate it, to show folks that you're moving in the right direction. And Jeff and Barb, if you want to jump at any time, just raise your hand and I'll go to you guys. Number three is, this is the time now for your company to put out the best work they've ever done. I mean, the highest quality products and services you can possibly imagine in the history of your company. People are going to recognize, well, put it this way, if you do great work and you do this sort of stuff, they're going to understand that you're indispensable, that you're an important part of their life if you're B2C, or their business if you're B2B. But the way to win that right now is magnificent quality. So double, triple down on making sure that everything you do is the best it's ever been. There's a great Steve Martin quote I love for this: be so good they can't ignore you. So that's the goal right now. The next one is get closer to your customer than you ever have been before. Check in with them, talk to them, see where they are. I've got one client, and I love what he did. He's a B2B. He sent them picked up the phone and called all 181 of their top clients. And he asked them 4 questions. Number one, how are you doing? How are you doing? How's your family doing? How are you holding up? Number 2 was, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being awesome and 1 being horrible, where do you see your company over the next 1 to 3 months? And then the next one is, where do you see, same thing, 1 to 10, where do you see your company in the next year? And it was pretty startling. Some of them were 9s and 10s. They still were going to do business. They were spending money. Their companies, there are many companies right now are doing better than they've ever done before. They're the busiest they've ever been. For most of us, that's not the way it's going right now. We're all of us are struggling, pivoting, trying to figure out how to keep our current customers, let alone try to bring in new customers. So, and then the last question he asked was, what can we do to help you now? what would be the most important things? So how are you doing, your family? Show the personal, genuine concern. How do you see your business in the next 60, 90 days? And how do you see your business over the next year? And then they use that to figure out how much help they needed and what they needed to do to support their customers. So that was that one. Let me go up.
Hey,
Oh,
John.
yeah.
Sorry, just before you move on, because it's a real common question that we're getting now, is there's a lot of noise, right? Everybody's online, everybody's hitting. So totally agree with how do we get closer to our customers, but also hearing a lot of people just going, how do I differentiate in the noise? How do I not sound like everybody else? Can you help us with that?
Yeah, you should know your customers well enough that you can customize that message. You can make it relevant to them. And here's the thing, you want to be adding so much value that people can't wait to open up your emails. That as soon as they see it, they know you're not wasting their time. You're not trying to just sell. You're not giving them, and as much as it's nice, not another report on how to deal with COVID or how to deal with remote working, which is all nice, but I've only gotten 700 of them today. So it's got to be, an email or a message that shows genuine concern, highly customized. I understand you. I understand your emotions. And it's got to add a ton of value, because if you don't do that in connecting with them, then they're not going to open up the next email, or they're not going to take the next call. So you've got to be positioned right now as a trusted advisor, as a partner, as a peer, in business to business and business to consumer. You've got to position yourself as someone that wants to remain as part of their life, that wants to be a product or a service they continue to use, and focus in the areas where you impact them, and try to be highly customized there and add a ton of value every time they open anything from you. Do either one of you have something else to add to that, or was I pretty close?
Yeah, that's good, John. I'll share some of the process and thought that's gone into how we're operating right now, and I will say that if things were hard before COVID hit, they're exponentially harder now. So if you didn't have really deep, meaningful, connected relationships, trusted advisor relationships with your customers before, you're starting way behind. And so I will say that picking up the phone is a really important piece right now to get to know people. And I'm finding, surprisingly, even though you think people don't have any time, people are happy to connect, they're happy to talk, and they're happy to have genuine conversations if they authentically believe that you care. The other part that we're talking about, even with this webinar, we thought, geez, the webinar space right now is really crowded. So how can we make it different? And our initial comment was, well, I think that we have a relationship with our community where they're going to listen to something that we have to say. And if we're lucky enough that the people sign in for this, we have to make it incredibly useful so they come back again. And then they tell everybody that they know how awesome this 1 hour was, so that community is going to grow. And we have to be prepared to even just be in the game knowing that we're going to fail. So every time we start something new, we're going to learn something new, right? And so this webinar, we think, is going to lead to other ideas, to other insights, to other learnings, see where some of the pain points are, where some of the patterns and the themes are in the communities that we serve, so that we can continue to curate some offerings. And then the third thing I would say that we're trying to encourage, not just ourselves, but our community to do, this is a time to express your unique voice. We all have those crazy ideas at 3 a.m. that we never try. Now is the time not only to try them, but we're actually seeing people try them. And the world resonates with authenticity. And so if you've got an idea that you genuinely think in your heart is going to help, find a way to get that out to the market and just see if a few people will pay attention.
Love it, love it. We're actually going to touch on a little bit of that later. So thanks for teeing that up.
Sorry,
Barb, go ahead.
Sorry, John, I just because we had a question come in, and it's right in this section, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read it to you. But it was about how do we approach customers, or in this case, donors, when the nature of your business means you have to shut down completely and will likely be shut down for months. So again, building those relationships when they can't see you maybe, or they can't participate with you. I think it still matches to what you're saying, but would you add anything else to this, to Chantel?
Yeah, so the key idea here is you don't want to go dark. Just because you're shut down completely, or you might be shut down for 60, 90 days or longer, you still want to stay. And I don't think you can stay top of mind right now. There's too many other things going on. but I think you need to keep communication again, and Jeff said it real well, that's authentic and valuable. And talk about when you come back, and we can't wait to see you, and we're looking forward to this, and here's some new things we're going to be doing when we reopen. And again, not bombard them, because you said people are getting wiped out, but, and like Jeff said, think of a really unique, special, authentic way to stay in touch with them and let them know that as soon as this goes, we're going to go on with you from a fundraising standpoint, since I used to do that. We're going to have events again, or we're going to, we're going to try new events, maybe where we don't put 1,000 people in one place. And we want your ideas. How can you help us figure out how to raise more money? Because every nonprofit right now that uses events is, or any business that people gather is shut down. So ask your customer, what are your best ideas? How do you think we can raise more money? What would you like to see us do when we reopen?
Yeah,
so
that's great, John. And I happen to know that Chantel's in the sort of the performing arts sort of space, and it reminds me of the importance of connecting to our why. So why do our customers, why do our donors, why do our stakeholders, why do they consume what we have to offer? Why do they engage with us in the first place? It's some kind of an emotional connection, and we can still figure out a way to deliver some kind of an emotional connection. So teaching people how a symphony orchestra gets assembled, having online performances. The gym industry and fitness industry was quick to pivot to offer online training and online courses, right? So they're staying engaged with their stakeholders that way. But I think connecting to your why is helpful. I also have to remind everybody, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box, because that's where we're answering the questions from, is the Q&A box.
Cool. So let's go back. We did take great care of your employees, celebrate big and small wins, get closer to your customers than you ever have before. And there was one more. Which one did I do? Here, let me see this.
Best work.
Now is the time to do, I had to go look at my notes. Now is the time to do the best work you've ever done. Number 5, focus on your financials, but don't go paranoid. Now is the time to look at your financials before you get in serious financial trouble, and make the tough decisions before you get emotional. What I don't want you to do is all of a sudden wake up one day, look at it, and do a knee-jerk reaction and make a big decision that's going to have a long-term impact without really thinking it through. So now's the time to study that stuff, look at it, and while you're calm and rational, create some red flags. And, if this number gets to here, we're going to have to make this decision. If this number goes this sideways this way, we're going to have to do this and do this. A little bit of scenario planning, basically. But don't, a lot of people now, and I've got some clients that are obsessed. They'll look at their numbers 3 or 4 times a day. They're checking everything. And their focus is not on doing great work and taking care of their customers and taking care of their people. Their focus is on not losing money or not going out of business. But I can tell you this, if you don't focus on the other things, I can pretty much tell you where your numbers are going to be. So focus on those other things, keep an eye on the financials. Now, I want to switch a little bit to the emotional side of this. And this is not an area I typically focus on, but I found recently that this has been extremely helpful to people. And part of it is I have almost 0 EQ, which we're going to talk about in a little while, emotional quotient. So I have a hard time connecting with emotions of other people. So these 2 things I'm going to teach you as helping me understand what's going on with other people. So the first thing I want to talk about is that when people are faced with what they perceive as negative change, and this is negative change, they go through a cycle. And it's actually the same cycle that people go through when someone close to them dies. It's a grieving cycle. And right now, people are grieving the loss of their normalcy. They're grieving the potential, damage to their business. They're grieving that they have to stay home with their family for the next month. Whatever it might be, but they actually are going through a severe emotional distress, just like someone close to them passed away. So you've got to keep that in mind. This is not a small deal. I'll also add here that during 9/11, I was working with several different companies, and it was fascinating that some people, in my opinion, overreacted dramatically to the event. They didn't know one in the tower, no one they knew died. I mean, it was scary and it was bad, but I looked at them and went, this is way out of proportion for this individual, in my opinion. What I came to learn later is they had all kinds of other emotional baggage, problems, issues, anxiety, stress. And when something like that came along, it bubbled up and then just exploded. So you're going to see some folks that are really, really emotionally stressed because they had all this other stress before we got here. So let's talk about the cycle. The cycle begins in stability. And this is amazing because we had stability about a month ago, a month and a half ago. You know, I mean, business was pretty much, or let's say 2 months ago, business was pretty much normal. And then all of a sudden, bam, this hit, and which is why this makes it so hard, is this happened so suddenly. It wasn't like we saw a recession coming and we could prepare for it and make some moves out front. It's just one day things are fine, the next week you're locked in your house, pretty much. So it came on suddenly, which is why the first stage is immobilization. People just stop dead in their tracks. They don't know what to do. They're overwhelmed. They're deer in the headlights. They can't move. And as I go through these, what I want you to do is think about the people in your company, think about your customers, think about your family, and think about yourself. So stage one is immobilization. I don't know what to do. Stage two then is denial. And we've got a lot of people in denial now that, well, it's going to be gone in a couple of weeks. And, we'll be back. My business will be fine in 60 days. We'll be back, no problem. Or, this isn't going to impact me. It might impact other people. They deny what's going on. We still have a lot of people there. After you realize that you can't deny it, you get angry. It spikes way up to anger. And again, if you've got a bunch of emotional baggage, this anger can become very, very strong. And you get angry at some of the things I just said, the economy, the government, the virus, your customers, your family, whatever it might be. And that anger can become overwhelming. After you get through that anger a little bit and you realize things aren't going to change today, it's not going to get better right away, people spiral out of control into depression. And I want to urge you to look for the signs of people who aren't communicating as much, who seem sad all the time, that have a very pessimistic attitude, and get them to a mental health counselor. As a business owner, you owe it to your employees, and you're going to be able to tell when they're not the way they usually are, and you can see, and you might want to do some research on the signs of depression for yourself, for your family. But a lot of people are going to hit that, and they're going to stay there for quite a while. After depression, oh, by the way, people can go back and forth in this. You can be depressed, and then, is that you raising your hand, Jeff, or just putting it next to the camera? Okay. You can be depressed, then go back up to anger, and go back to denial, and then go back. So it isn't just move on sequentially. You can go back and forth. So after we get out of depression, we get to testing. And personally, I don't think we're going to get into serious testing for quite a while of going back to the movie theater, going back to the restaurant, or everybody coming back to the office. And I believe personally, it's never going to be the way it was before. Now that a lot of us are working virtually from home and other stuff, I've got many clients that say probably 40% of my workforce is not coming back to the office. Just, they do great work at home. There was no reason for them to be here. Well, I'm doing a lot of CEO coaching. One of the CEOs, I asked him what his best advice was. He said, I will never buy a building again for tons of people. I'm going to figure out, can we do flexible work? So I think there's going to be a lot of changes in the way that we test and go until we get to, I hate that thing, the new normal. And once we get to the new normal, people will accept that, and they'll test it again and get it, and then eventually get back in stability again. So those are the processes that people go through, and they will be outsized. They will be significant. They will be painful. Barb.
Yeah, so totally agree with you, John. Actually, very interesting, because I'm seeing those cycles, and it's been very fascinating, I guess would be the appropriate word, but where, I've had leaders that, like you said, there was the stability side where we saw, or what we defined as leadership. And then what I've seen people go to is either this incredible resiliency where they've gone through that cycle, like you said, but really fast, and they're on the other side. And then I have leaders that literally went to a fetal position. Yeah. And really coaching hard with them to help them. And I really agree with your point. Often it's because there's a trigger that there's something they've been carrying with them for a while. And that's why they're having that much trouble moving out. Any thoughts on, like, definitely the mental health we can help with, whatever. For me, I think coaching has helped me for sure. I'd love to think that I'm helping all my clients, that you're helping your clients. Is there other things that you would suggest to help people, though, move through that cycle faster? Or...
Yeah. Actually, it was the next tool I'm going to teach.
Oh, sorry.
No. You guys, you're doing great. Just softballs for me. Here you go. Wait a minute. I've tried to use a hockey analogy, but I don't know anything. Like, you've left the net empty? I made that up. I don't know. All the people in Canada right now are going, oh, the guy's an idiot. He doesn't know anything.
110% and one shift at a time. Those are pretty safe analogies to use, John, up here.
Okay. So here is a 4-step process, and I'm going to recommend the book that I learned this from. There's lots of places you can learn this sort of stuff, but the book is called I Hear You. I Hear You. And it's an entire book on validation, on emotional validation. And I'm going to tell you that this is not a skill that I had 3 years ago. It's one I realized I was lacking in, and I've been studying it, trying to get better. But I realize right now it's a very powerful tool. So here it is. Step 1, shut up. Just listen. Just, listen with the genuine intent to understand. Don't interrupt. Don't defend. Don't argue. Just be quiet and listen to really deeply understand the emotions of the other person, what they're going through. After you've listened, step 2 then is to validate their emotions. Listen here, even if you don't agree with them, even if you say this is silly, this is blown out of proportion, they're obsessing about this, even if that's what you feel, you have to validate their emotions because that's how they see the world right now. And they have every right to feel that way. And when you validate their emotions, you just say something like, I can see, or I've listened to you carefully and I can see you're very frustrated. And that's only normal in a situation like this. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that's unfair. And I think a lot of people are frustrated. So I understand why you feel that way. Or I'm depressed too. I mean, this is tough. A lot of our friends are going through tough stuff. Our family is, and we need to work together to help each other out on this, but it's only normal, or it's right for you to feel a little bit of depression. So it's saying you're okay, your emotions are okay, you're allowed to feel this way. And the way I always put it is they have every right to feel the way they feel, even if you don't agree with it. That's a big, big point. Step 3 then is to offer advice, not give them advice, to offer advice. 90% of the time, they're going to accept the advice. Tell me, yes, I want to hear, I want to learn. 10% of the time, they just want to vent. And then 10% of the time, your job is let them vent. And then just validate the emotion again. Let them vent, validate the emotion. And again, it's because you love them and you're supporting them and you're allowing them to have those emotions. You feel this way? That's okay. I'm going to help you with this. So if they do say, yes, I would like your advice, here's the way you don't want to do it. This is what you need to do. You should do this. You need to stop doing that. You need to change this. You want to back up, and a lot of us that are in it's just a conflict resolution tool as well as use what's called I statements. And the way this looks is, well, Jeff, I've listened to you carefully. I can see you're really angry, and you have every right to be. And the way I see it, from my point of view, one of the things that's helped me in the past is to do these 4 things. Do you think that might work for you? Not, Jeff, you need to do these 4 things, and that's going to fix everything. Because a lot of us, that are leaders or that are high Ds are used to fixing stuff. And I think that's one of the especially frustrating things right now is we can't fix this.
Yeah.
It's going to run its own course, and for a lot of us that makes us angry and frustrated. Well, it's the same thing when you tell somebody what to do. You need to do this. So back up with the I statement. The way I see it from my point of view, what I've seen in the past, what I hear is this. And you notice I'm sort of being a little bit timid. Well, actually what I'm doing is I'm being very assertive without being aggressive. I'm giving advice, but I want that person to own the advice. And here's a really tricky way to listen to this. I want them to tell me what I want them to hear. So instead of me saying, you need to do this, I want them to say, John, I think I need to do this. And I go, that's a brilliant idea. How can I help you do that? And then John, the fourth and final, go ahead, Barb.
Oh. Sorry, I was kind of giggling there in the sense that I think you'd like my saying. I often say don't let others should on you and don't should on others.
Yeah, and that's what you don't want to do.
Very powerful.
They've got enough stress, they've got enough anxiety, and you don't want to try to fix all their problems. You can't. Help them to fix their own. So we've listened without interrupting with a genuine intent to understand. I mean, really from your heart. I'm curious how this person feels. I want to know. I've validated the emotions unequivocally. Boom, you got it. Number 3, I've offered help. They've accepted it. I've used I statements. And then the 4th step is to validate their emotion again, and then offer more help, in the future. So, Jeff, we're both angry about this. It's been challenging for all of us, and it's rational for you to feel that way. And I hope that the things you and I discussed, that the ideas that you came up with are going to help you move through this. And if there's anything else I can do to support you in any way, you let me know. I'm here for you. So that's the model. It takes practice. For someone like me with a low EQ, I have to use that framework. I have to walk through it because it doesn't come naturally to me. This isn't a skill I have naturally, but this is great for your family, for your employees, and then the scale is good for you to realize where you are on this. So let me stop there. Do either one of you have a question, or is there anything that's coming in?
Well, yeah, actually, I was going to say there's a comment here from Robin, which I thought was really interesting. So I don't know if everybody can see it, so I'm going to read it. I apologize if you can see it, follow along. But it says, not a question, but a comment. I think it's more than grieving for some, it's repeated trauma. So what we're saying, so that baggage along the way, right? So in trauma-informed models of care, people disengage from their feelings, trudge through each day. Then once it's over, they'll start to process their feelings, and that has happened. My point is that some people numb out for a while. And so I think that's really valid, Robin, and sort of aligns with what you're saying, John, is that we might be doing a lot of different things. We don't know what's there for people. So how do we help them through?
Yeah, and Robin, thank you, because the word trauma is one I should be using. And I've only been teaching this to other people for about a week now, 10 days, because of what happened. So in going forward, I will use the word trauma, because that's exactly what it is. It's past trauma that now is being exacerbated and, oversized, that's adding to everything else. So thank you very much, Robin, for that comment. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
So
we have one from Justin, but it's a little bit off topic to where we are right now. So Justin, I just wanted to put a shout out that we'll come back to it in the Q&A. We weren't ignoring you, sir. Okay, cool. Go ahead, John.
Cool. So we've talked about what I think are some of the things you can control right now around your employees and great work and your customers. We've talked about the emotional side of this and how they go through the cycle and how to help them and support them through that. Now I want to bounce to leading in a crisis. And leadership is something I've been studying. I've been the owner, CEO of 4 companies, worked with hundreds of companies around the world, and I've studied leadership for about 30 years, written a book on it, and I've seen it change during my career. When I came into the workforce, and I'm 56, when I came in 1989, it was all command and control. When your boss said jump, it was how high, sir, and how many times, and it was pretty much all white males. And that was partially brought over because a lot of those folks were World War II veterans or Vietnam veterans, and they had learned a lot from the military. But that style does not work. Now, I'm going to make a caveat here. That style works in cases of extreme emergency. 90% of the time, you don't want to be command and control. If every now and then you got to say, get in the lifeboats, we got to do this right now, I'm okay with that. But for the vast majority of times, that is not an acceptable style of leadership anymore. Then the pendulum swung, and I think we're seeing a little bit of this right now. It's fascinating as I'm explaining this, I'm seeing the parallels to leadership by spreadsheet. And for years, I worked in major corporations as a consultant and a trainer, and everything was numbers. It was, we've got to shave this number. We got to hit our number. We got to reduce headcount. In other words, go out and fire a bunch of people because we need to make our numbers. I can't imagine how many times I heard that. Reduce headcount to make our numbers. Harkening back to what I said about your financials, don't run your business strictly by the numbers now. You need to keep an eye on them. But I saw a lot of really bad decisions made in companies because they looked at the spreadsheet and looked at the number and equaled it out and said, okay, then we need to do this, with no strategic thinking and no emotional thinking to it. Mm-hmm. Now we sort of swung back to what's called servant leadership, which I think the folks at Results and all of us are very, very happy. And that takes the normal leadership of the leader at the top of the pyramid with all the people underneath them and flips it upside down, where it's the leader at the bottom supporting everybody else. And it's, instead of saying, here's what I want you to do, they say, what can I do to support you? And I believe right now, and this was before the pandemic, but people really need that now. They need a leader that supports them and takes care of them and empowers them and trusts them and loves them. And as a leader, it's your job to help people get through this in one piece and your company in one piece so that you can pick it back up when things go. And hopefully, as we talked about, get that hockey stick. There's a Canadian reference. Excellent. So now we're back at servant leadership. And I want to now focus on a minute what I see is 3 things you must do to be an effective leader in the future. And then I'm going to go over and end with some fundamentals. I just did a TED talk on this, and I think there's 3 quotients that every effective leader has to have now and going forward. The first one is IQ, but I'm not talking about your IQ number. What I'm really talking about here is competence. And I believe that for some folks, we actually have more downtime than we had before. You've got back your commute. You're not hanging out at other people's desks. And some of us find ourselves with a little bit of extra time. Now is a time to focus on your skills. Watch a YouTube video, listen to a TED talk, read for 15 or 20 minutes a day. Listen to a podcast, go to a webinar like this, but invest in yourself and encourage all of your folks to invest in yourself to increase your IQ, which you actually can do. It can go higher. Also, it can go lower if you spend too much time at happy hour, but we won't go into that. The next one is EQ, which is your emotional quotient, which I've mentioned several times. I don't have any, or I used to not have any. Years ago, I took a test on EQ and on self-competitiveness. And I'll never forget the researcher came back to me and said, well, John, you've got the highest score we've ever seen on self-competitiveness. I was, yes, I'm number 1. I set the curve. She's like, this is not one you want to be number 1 on. And I'm like, and then she said, and you also have one of the lowest scores we've ever seen on EQ. I'm like, who cares? So EQ to me is empathy and self-awareness put together. And that self-awareness is a big one now. What are my emotions? What am I feeling? How am I dealing with this? And then the empathy is, how do other people feel about this and all this stuff? Here's what I've learned, and this is long before what we're in right now, that EQ is actually more important than IQ. As long as you're competent, if you can't get along well with other people, connect with them, you cannot be an effective leader. I do a workshop oftentimes where I won't drive you through the whole thing, where I ask people to identify the characteristics of the best leader and the worst leader they've ever worked for. And write those out. And then I say, next to each one of those, I want you to write, is this an IQ issue? Is this about competence? Or is this EQ about behavior and emotion? Typically, it's 7-to-1 EQ to IQ. So that's a big one. Now comes the one that is by far the most relevant and the one that all my clients are focused on, which is AQ, which is your adaptability or your agility quotient. And that's your ability, and we talked about this a little bit, to take in lots of new information, new ideas, to compare it to the stuff I already know and all this new stuff, create new ideas from that, change your frame of reference, really be brutal at looking at your own mental biases and throwing away stuff that doesn't work, process more. This is another good time to clean house a little bit on your processes, your systems, your procedures, but you have to be adaptable and nimble enough to do it quickly and to understand when it's really necessary. It's not change for change's sake. It's change in areas that the market's driving and that will help your business get better. A lot of people say you need to embrace change or revel in change. I think right now you need to use your AQ to drive change in your organization. So there's IQ, EQ, AQ. Anything you guys want to add before I go to the fundamentals and we wrap this up for just Q&A?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the juxtaposition between, getting to market fast or having that agility really fast right now. And I see 3 things. It's like the market's available. There's lots of things virtual. Get to it, get going. Then there's there's a saying I love that says that perfectionism is a serial killer. A serial killer because you won't even try the idea, right? So there's that piece they're holding people back. And then if I go back to earlier what you said about, let's do our best work. How do we not get caught in that triangle, John, of the perfectionism, doing our best work, and then we just need to try and fail and see what's going to happen? Could you give us that agility?
Very, very good question. So part of it is, and it's a saying we have in our company, excellence, not perfection. I want to do great work, but nobody gets perfection. Trying to get to that is, impossible, as you said. It's a form of insanity. So, but I do want to say that we want to, double, triple check everything that goes out the door to make sure it's absolutely the best we can possibly do. That doesn't mean it's perfect. Now, the other side of that is, and I'm going to get on this pretty quickly, when you look at what it takes to become world-class at something. I read a book several years ago called The Cambridge Handbook of Expertise and Expert Performance. 1,000-page book written by experts about how to become an expert. And so I'll save you the reading. There was 4 P's to become world-class. And we're going to take this and put it right on everyone's business. And I want you to think about this. The first P was passion. That you've got to be really, really good at what you do. You got to love it. You got to be, it's got to be something that, and for every entrepreneur, we go into this because we're passionate about building a business. You guys are passionate about helping companies. So am I. Other people are passionate about food service or whatever it might be. So passion is number 1. Number 2 in expertise is persistence. And that is Malcolm Gladwell's book, 10 years or 10,000 hours. And you can't put that in now, but hopefully you put it in up to now. You've been working in your business, focusing on it in your area, your craft for 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 30 years. And you've put in your time, which leads to the third P, which goes to what, third P is practice, which is constantly getting better and using a coach or a trainer or a colleague or a friend who will push you constantly to get better and better and better at what you're focusing on. Having someone from the outside encouraging you and making sure you're not working on the easy stuff you know how to do, that's done. Now let's work on the hard stuff, the new stuff, the things you didn't know how to do and get better and better. So we have passion, persistence, deliberate practice, which leads to the fourth and final P, which hits it here, which is pattern recognition. When you become really good at something and you understand it deeply, you see a pattern that other people don't see. And I'm going to try, Jeff, I'm trying as hard as I can here. I'm about to use another hockey analogy. Which one would it be? You skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it is. That's understanding the pattern of the game. I'm going to die. I'm going to get so many nasty Canadian emails. Actually, Canadians don't send nasty emails. It would be like, not a very good job, John, but you tried.
Yeah.
So it's the ability, this is how a great musician can look at a piece of sheet music and hear the music in their head. How chess grandmasters can see the whole board, how great athletes can see the whole field or the whole rink. It's how great business people get competitive advantage. So you asked about how do you change? How do you fail forward fast? You fail forward fast on the patterns you're seeing.
Yeah.
You take educated guesses, not just a guess and let's just throw it up, but let's just toss this up because here's 5 underlying factors that I've been watching. And now that I'm studying and reading and I've got my AQ and I'm constantly adapting, now I'm going to look for things I'm starting to see in the marketplace and patterns emerge and numbers change to where all of a sudden I'm going to try something totally new, but not just completely as a guess, but a well-informed and well thought out guess that's based on pattern recognition. Yeah,
that's really good, John. And you're making me think. You at the start of the conversation that you talked about the importance of leaning and staying close to our talented people, and for companies that haven't dealt with their talent situation prior to COVID, again, it's going to be more challenging. But right now, more than ever, we know that a source of intrinsic motivation comes from autonomy. And I drive some of the people on our team crazy with this that are very, very process driven, and I'm not. But my philosophy right now with our company is we have to let the horses out of the stable. We got to let the thoroughbreds run, and but not just wildly. We have to give people some criteria, and so some of the criteria that we give our team and our clients is that the actions and behaviors, of course, have to be well intended, but they have to be aligned with our core purpose, which is unleashing people's potential, and they have to be aligned with our promise to the market, which is really helping businesses reach their potential. So those 2 things matter, and then we've given people some specific short-term criteria that they have to answer. And these questions that we're asking ourselves is, first of all, is it impactful? So is your idea, do you think it has a chance to be highly impactful? Is it cost-effective? Is it easy to execute? And do you think, to the best of your knowledge, it's unique? So if it's a webinar, how will we make that webinar unique? Our answer so far is to bring in expert thought leaders like you. So
I was gonna say, hopefully you get one next week.
That's because we know no one wants to show up and look at me. They might show up for Barb, but we know for sure they'll show up for you, John. So that's sort of been some of the approaches that we're taking internally.
Cool. Well, I think now is a good spot because I'm sure we have lots of Q&A, and let's have a conversation. So I'll turn it over to you guys and some of the questions
Sure.
we've got, and we'll see if we can help specific problems for folks.
Sure, and that's great, John. I want to remind people, so put the questions in the Q&A box. Now, the other part, if we don't get to your questions, we want to encourage you to reach out to us via email at info@unleashresults.com. So info@unleashresults.com. Tell us your questions, tell us your stories of resourcefulness, tell us the sources of inspiration right now, tell us the tools and the habits that you're leveraging with your team. We want to hear from you, and that'll inform some of the offerings that we put into the marketplace and some of the stories that we tell. So Barb, I think you had a question.
Yeah, no, I'll go into the questions to answer in there. The one thing too, just because the talent is such a part of world class, and you guys were talking about it, the one thing is too, this is probably a time where we're going to see A players displaced. That normally doesn't happen. A players have choice. And right now in this market, people that are normally working and have lots of choices happen to be sometimes on the market. So it's also a great time to acquire talent if you're looking to top grade your team. So really think about that. John, I'm going to go to the...
Let me add one other thing on that. I've heard this from a couple of my clients that told me this, and just think about this. People will remember, both your employees and your customers, for a long time after this, how you treated them right now. So if you're there to support your people and your talent and take care of them, and you're there to support your customers and love on them and help them, when this is all gone, they're going to remember who the people were that really took care of them.
Great comment, John. Okay, going out there, Rob, description again over AQ. So the agility quotient. She just wanted you to say it one more time to make sure she really grasped it. And then Kevin, along the same lines, wants to know, is there a book specifically for that you would suggest?
Wow, well, first of all, it's the adaptability or agility quotient, and it's your ability to be nimble, fast, change quickly, take in new information, get rid of old things, and that's basically the overview. I don't know of a book yet, and I'm sure there's some out there. This came to me through my lovely wife, Sheila, who heard it on the Wharton Business Channel. And I'm starting to research it a bunch now. I've pulled down a bunch of articles. There are good articles on the internet, but I have not found a book. And if somebody does, please send it to me. My email is easy, john@johnspence.com. So if you've got a question or something, or follow up for me, but if you have recommendations on AQ books, I'll take those.
Great. Thank you, John. Jeff, did you want me to keep going here, or do you have some that you picked out?
Go, you guys. I'm actually going to go to a question. So Lisa Dobb has a really interesting question, and I was thinking this earlier myself. Is what if you're a mid-level manager and you're working for a leader that either lacks the self-awareness or is displaying some of those curling up in the fetal position behaviors that are not conducive to navigating successfully during this time? How do you approach someone that sort of might be above you on the org chart?
This is a good question. It's a technique I use in all my coaching. Is rather than call them out on it, what I do is I send an article to everybody or a video to everybody and say, hey, this is important for all of us. We all need to look at this and we need to talk about it. And that way, if the leader or anyone else comes in, it's not you versus them. It's you and them talking about the article or the video. Right now, one of the things, and this is one of the difficult things you're going to see in companies, is I saw during the recession that one of the biggest problems was a lack of courageous communication. Mm-hmm. People knew there were problems. They knew there were issues. They knew that they were financially, they were in trouble, but they didn't want to talk about it. I still see that now in companies. It's even more of a challenge and a problem now. So there's a great video on radical candor. And recently, one of the CEOs I was coaching, or I am coaching, I sent it to the entire executive management team, and they ended up sending it to the entire company. And we use that as a discussion point. So don't attack the person, overwhelm them with good information under the auspices of I'm trying to help everyone, and let's have a conversation about this. It's tricky, works great.
Yeah, it is tricky. And I think the dynamic is even more challenging right now. There's always a sense of fear when approaching anyone for healthy conflict and giving them some courageous feedback, especially when it's somebody that might be more senior than you. But now job security is just paramount, even more so, and it makes those conversations even scarier. So Lisa, thanks for that Thanks for that question. There's a lot of discussion about empathy as well. I want to make people know, make people aware that we've got a fantastic framework for if you're just sort of starting out on how do I become more and demonstrate more empathy as a leader. We've actually got some really clear steps and some guidelines that you can follow. Just follow the script and you'll start to get better almost overnight. So just email us at info@unleashresults.com. We'll send it over to you. Barb, you want to go to you for a question?
Well, I was going to say, thank you, Shauna. Well, Shauna posted an article on sort of that grieving process and the emotional intelligence. So thank you, Shauna. Shout out to you. We were talking about, there is some in here, John, that we talk about in regards to, we're still leading virtually, or we're still trying to attach with those team members. If you had to give some, it's Katie saying basically like, oh, sorry, Katie, that wasn't you, that was Kim. The top 3 things you would say right now, focus here. What are they?
You're going to have to rephrase that question because I lost the actual question at the very end.
I'll read it verbatim, then I won't editorialize it. As a new leader starting virtually, what are top 3 things essential for success? So new leader and having no face-to-face, virtual right away. What should Kim focus on?
Over communication, or not over, but the highest level of communication you can get with your team without burdening them. Checking in one-on-one, talking to them, and again, not just on business, but on personal, how are we doing? Typically stuff we wouldn't normally do, but people need our emotional support right now. And again, I'm not someone that normally does that, so I recognize it and I've had to work on it. So communication. Number 2 is really clear expectations. They can't come and check in with you and show you something and, like they could walk down the hallway. So take your time to set extremely clear expectations of what success looks like, of what great work looks like, of what outcomes you want, so that people don't have to guess. Great phrase I learned years ago, ambiguity breeds mediocrity. And then the other thing, and this is I'm glad this question came up, is right now is a time as a leader, you have a really difficult balancing act. People want you to be courageous and decisive. So, to make bold bets, to take the tough decisions, to do the hard things, and to have a clear path. At the same time, you have to balance that with transparency, authenticity, and vulnerability. I don't have all the answers. I got these answers over here. I'm real decisive about this, but over here, I don't know. I'm not sure. I need your help. That's why you're on the team. So as a new leader, you're going to have to, as any leader, you're going to have to balance out, where do I give direction and control and set very clear expectations, but how do I do it in a humble, loving way where I'm willing to be vulnerable about some of the stuff I don't know or places I need help. And that's a challenge for all leaders, but especially someone who's just stepping into that role.
Yeah. And John, it's interesting. I would say that a ton of my coaching right now is focused exactly on that. Because I generally coach within the C-suite. So the organization is looking towards our leaders saying, do something, show us some leadership, demonstrate something. And then at the same time, though, they're as scared as everyone else. So finding that balance is tricky. So thank you for commenting on it.
So we only have 1 more minute left for questions, John. I wanted to get back to a very early question that Justin asked. How do we deal with customers who want to cancel orders due to current circumstances, even though they've got non-refundable deposits?
Wow, this is a hard question. So this comes down to your philosophy of business. And this is actually a very big idea. Everybody that runs a business or is in a business has a way that they think businesses should run. And some businesses are going to look at that situation. I've got one client right now saying, how can we work with you? Can we defer payments? Can we give us 50% now and pay us 50% later? Or we're just going to put a hold on your stuff for 3 months. Other businesses are going to say, no, I need the cash flow and I got to keep my business running, and I'm going to have to put them into collections. I've got a contract. Now realize that you will likely lose that customer or might put that customer in jeopardy if you demand the money and you enforce the contract. But it is contract. You have every right to do that. It's legal. And if it's between your company and their company, that's a business philosophy leadership answer of, am I going to protect me and do this, or am I going to find a way to work, or am I going to let some customers, my best customers, slip a little bit and maybe only enforce it on the ones that weren't that great anyways, and I wouldn't mind if they went away. But that all comes down to what's your philosophy. And the only way you know that is sit down and think it through.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great advice. And I'll just add to that quickly, courageous conversations and vulnerability. Absolutely. I've actually seen some really and heard some great stories from our customers that are sharing what the impact will be to their business and to their people in particular if their customer doesn't pay the bill. So making them understand that if you don't pay your bill, there's a good chance we're gonna have to lay off some people. And it's not a feel sorry for me type story. It's just to understand the consequence on a human level and finding out a way to share pain or add more value. Pay your bill, but we're going to add this to it on top, or we're going to offer some complimentary services or whatever it might be. So yeah, great advice.
You know, one of the hardest things of all this is that there's a lot of good businesses that are being punished for no fault of their own.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I work with companies that are great, that are extremely well run. We were all talking about one of your clients who's a good friend of mine, whose company has just been ravaged by this. And it is a great company. I mean, they were on fire, in fuego before this happened. And then all of a sudden, you know, it went away and it's not there. So it's really hard for a lot of us, a lot of you. You run a good company, you're a good person, you've been doing great, you got great people, and then all of a sudden, the future of your company is in jeopardy, and it's not your fault.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great, John. So we have to wrap up to keep things on time here. I want to thank Barbara and John so much for your time today, your insights, your experience. You're both such amazing people and so sort of well-versed and educated in this topic and others. There's lots of ways for us to stay connected. So first of all, we absolutely want to gather as much feedback as we can. We need to keep reinventing these sessions so that they're highly valuable and useful for you and your time. And so when you exit the meeting today, click OK. It will automatically pop up the opportunity for you to provide some feedback. Stay connected with us at the email address. Again, send us the questions that we didn't get to at info@unleashedresults.com. We're gonna make available an organizational leadership audit. So if you want to actually score yourself and every leader in your entire company, we will make that leadership audit available. We'll put a report together for you. This is complimentary, just as a way to give you a starting point to generate some of these conversations. Even if you're a mid-level manager, this could be a really good way, to John's earlier point, to start to nudge people in the direction of authentic leadership. Visit John Spence's website. He's got a marvelous newsletter that goes out frequently with all kinds of tips and tools, www.johnspence.com. And then we've got tons of other things that we've got available for people. We've got peer groups we're putting together, leadership circles as an example. We'll even do some coaching, and we'll hop on and do a complimentary 1-hour leadership workshop for your very own executive team. And then my final thoughts, I'm really excited about our episode 2 next week. So join us at the same time, the same place to see Amber Mack as we talk about relentless adaptation in the time of COVID-19. Amber Mack is becoming a national treasure, a national celebrity. She's on all the major networks. She did a Q&A with our Prime Minister earlier in the week. And she's got some phenomenal stories of how companies have pivoted in the last 3 weeks to be relevant and start generating revenue now. So that's going to be a can't miss conversation. Very much hope to see everybody there, and thank you again for your time and attention today. This is a wonderful way to spend an hour with both of you and the entire group of attendees.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Have
everybody.
a great day.
Stay safe.